My family lived on the southern edge of a certain Midwestern industrial city in an old house, old enough that its basement still had a dirt floor. I was not yet old enough to openly question a parent's behavior, but certainly old enough to recognize its oddness when my father began digging. I retain only a single clear memory of the time before the situation became alarming, and my father forsook sunlight forever. I'm sitting at the bottom of the wooden stairs that lead down to our basement. Ahead, in the dimness, stands my father, up to his waist in the hole. Still in his dark blue uniform from the factory, skin and fabric blackened by the hot breath of machinery and further smudged now by the damp earth, I watched father with the satisfaction of a child who sees in her presence a will of limitless capability. Upstairs, my mother calls out that dinner is done. My father takes one last shovel of earth, turns it over the side of the excavation, and, in a single incredible motion, crawls out of the hole simply by pressing the sole of his boot to the lip of the pit and moving his whole body upward, walking right past me, right up the stairs. He was always tall, angular man, as the remaining picture of him suggests, but to this day I clearly conjure the marvelous image of my father's long, long legs striding over me as he emerged from the hole he was spending years digging beneath our house. Apart from him, there was three of us, my mother, my brother, and myself. There are many things about my mother I do not understand. She first found my father attractive, she admitted to me many years later, because of how unusual he was. He had come to the Midwestern industrial town and secured a job at the same factory where my mother was working. Though a practical man, he read constantly and voraciously in a subject ranging from engineering repairs to philosophy, a habit instilled in him, as he claimed, by his own parents. This was all my father ever said of his family beyond us. Any further inquiry into the subject caused him to leave the room or bring up some other pressing issue. Mother once theorized that father had run away from home. Whatever his reasons for leaving his family behind, my father did not wait too long before beginning a new one. I was born only a few months after my parents were married. Within a few years, my father made enough money that my mother could stay home and watch over me and, not too long after, my brother. Then one night, when my brother was perhaps only a year old, my father came home, pulling a brand new shovel from the back of his pickup truck and descending into the basement where he began to dig. At first, he told my mother that he was preparing to put down the cement floor, suggesting a prelude to a full or partially renovation of the house. As a child, the movements of an adult were still largely mysterious to me. I do not know the specific circumstances under which my father's realization that this motive was untrue. Nor do I know exactly what transpired when my father told my mother that they must go to the basement to discuss matter closer to its source, for after the door shut behind them, my brother and I were left alone in the house. My brother cried most of the night while I lay in my bed, pillows pressed to my ears. The next day my mother reappeared, quietly prepared our meals, and then locked herself in her bedroom shortly before our father returned home and commenced digging once again. My father, for his part, stopped sleeping in the bedroom with her, instead taking to the basement, a decision which coincided with the first signs of his terrible metamorphosis. Oh, Jesus, that was a long paragraph. The changes were slow, but noticeable. My father began to grow paler, and by the time the factory closed and he could spend the whole day in the basement, he was as white as chalk. Perhaps it was a general evidence of wear, the change in skin tone and his subsequent emaciation, I can read, that made him look taller, as if his height increased in proportion to the depth of the project in his basement. Meanwhile, my mother put my brother into preschool and sent me to a latchkey program while she worked to support us. In what seemed a deliberate contrast to my father, she grew somehow darker and smaller. My father dug uninterrupted in the basement for at least a decade. Oh, geez. And once I started high school, he did not even leave the basement to join us for dinner. Then my mother left him. Father was sufficiently enveloped in his life's task that there was no need to replay the argument from my childhood. Whatever desire he once had to keep us home with him had apparently fallen away, lost in the depths of that pit. On her own, Mother seemed to physically decompress, to become less proud. She spoke more, laughed more, she had more friends and lovers. We did not see my father at all after we left. On the day we left for good, he did not even come out of the basement, though that By that point, it was questionable how easily he could get through the doorway, so tall he had grown. It was not until many years later that my brother suggested we return a visit to our father's house. This seems like a bad idea. Needless to say, my brother and I had different experiences of our early home life. My brother was young enough that my father began digging that it seemed to him an indifferent fact of life. It seemed obvious to me that something was wrong with our home. Its wrongness was screamed, I thought, by the chilled tensionness which with our mother moved through it, returning home from work in the late afternoon, serving meals, and retiring to her bedroom. The wrongness was screamed, of course, by my father, who, after losing his job in the factory, spent nearly all day in the basement, emerging at irregular intervals to eat and use a toilet. This is to say nothing of the physical changes he underwent as time went on. The rawness was streamed by my own actions, the heavy worry I felt that at any moment the fragile equilibrium of our home would be upset and my brother's friends would witness the terrifying truth of our family situation. A situation I myself could not begin to articulate, but which I felt ashamedly that an outsider would. Of course, my brother, young as he was, saw nothing wrong with the intervention, with inviting his friends to our home, and even taking them down to the basement to see what he called, after our father's example, I believe, the renovations. The friends never asked to return to the basement after my brother took them down. Some of them quietly designed to never return to our house at all, much to my relief, though my brother was often disappointed. I recall only one instance when my brother was perhaps 7, when one of his playmates made a scene. Oh, this is going to end poorly, I can tell. Shit. I believe my brother's friend came from a religious family, which may have been part of the problem, and that may also be something I recognize only due to my own bias. At any rate, though his cosmology was different from my own, he at least shared some of my anxieties when he attempted to explain to my brother that our father's project in the basement was deeply unnatural. I emerged from the living room because, down the hall, I could hear crying. I knew that my brother had a friend over, so I was prepared for the worst. The two boys stood outside the door to the basement, which still stood open. My brother looked up as I approached, at a loss as to how to comfort his weeping companion. "You're going to hell," our visitor informed me, after I managed to get him to look at me. "That's where he's digging down there," the child said, looking from me to my brother. "He's digging to hell, and you're all going with him." Jesus, that's quite a leap to make. My brother did not invite as many classmates over after that day. I don't believe he ever invited any of them down to see the renovations ever again. "Are we really going to hell?" he asked me one night, laying beside me in bed after a nightmare sent him to my room. I told him I did not know. "But is that where Dad is digging to?" he asked. I told him there was no such place. "Then why is Dad digging?" In the early days, when I sat this downstairs and watched him work, my father gave me dozens of flippant reasons for his project, singing dinosaur bones. All of these excuses had lost their currency by the point, of course, and when asked when he was really doing it, as my brother told him his religious visitor had inquired, my father had other things to say. Oh, so I can see he's singing dinosaur bones. Let's see what he has to say. "This is not the real world." "Well, that took an interesting turn," my father would say, or something along these lines. "What we think is the real world is just a layer of dirt caked around the true core of the universe." Okay. "And what is dirt? Inert matter, dead weight, the remains of those who came and went before us, content only further impressed down upon the creation of their waste. There is a time when human beings were giants walking among the small earth, but now the earth has grown fat and hateful to our soil, while we have grown small." What the fuck? What direction is this going? Starting here, I'm scraping away this sediment, our coagulated filth, and returning us to our original glory. Okay. I assembled this manifesto from memory, from various iterations and variations Father often offered us over the years. And certainly it was a sort of hearsay that offended my brother's erstwhile friend. Still, they were not satisfactory answers to us then. It would not be satisfactory for my brother as he huddled, fearing hell, in my bed. But frankly, I had no other answers for him, and let the matter lapse into silence, which is perhaps why, all those years later, he urged me to come back with him to our father's house. Ah! Of course my experiences play a part in my eventual decision. A year or so before we left my father was the last time I ventured down into the basement. My brother was out with his friends, having reached the age where he finally realized the awkwardness that resulted from bringing visitors to our home, and mother had locked the door to her room and apparently gone to bed. Father was, of course, laboring in the basement and I was doing homework in the living room while watching television. Then a knock came onto the door. Is the background getting brighter or am I going insane? No, the background's getting brighter. The man on the porch was squat, but dressed neatly in a suit, coat, and hat. A pair of very small spectacles were perched at the end of his nose, looking minuscule in comparison to his large, round face. Hello, young lady, he said to me in labored voice. Is your father home? Who are you? I asked. The man tipped his old-fashioned hat back in his head, smiling with the rubbery lips. You would have no reason to know me, of course, he said, but I am your uncle. On which side of the family? I left the man on the porch, the door locked, while I went to seek my mother's help. Thus I discovered she was unresponsive, as she often was those days. This left me with the only option to summon my father from the basement. He did not respond when I opened the door and yelled down, though I could hear faintly the sound of his digging. I looked back to the front door where I could see through the pebble glass the rounded figure of the man who claimed to be my uncle, and descended the wooden stairs into the basement. The only light, as always, came from the single bulb hanging from the ceiling. My father had learned to operate in these conditions, but for me the lack of illumination cast the labyrinth below into a mess of confusion and seemingly contradictory paths of damp black earth and only slightly blacker shadows. Father had first attempted to dig straight down, but as the years went on, he elaborated his original plans, angling outward from the center of the basement as a depth of perhaps 15 feet. From there, he began to hollow out the entirety of the basement with one long, looping path, threading and bending around itself like some monstrous length of viscera, from all the while continuing his march downward. I stood at the bottom of the stair that, as I had thought of it, still properly belonged to our house. By my feet was a stack of unfamiliar books. They were old, with blank but warped brown covers. Next to them was what appeared to be an antique child's rattle, caked with dirt, and several rocks chipped into various unnatural but vaguely instrumental shapes. I turned into the void and called for my father. No response came, but I grew more certain that I could hear, however distantly, the sound of father's shovel. I called for him again, this time giving also my purpose for interrupting his work. There's a man at the door, I said. He says he's my uncle. I stood and waited, and as I did so, the sound of digging stopped. My father emerged a minute or so later, unfolding himself from the narrow bends of his maze, his pale skin covered only by the rags of his clothes, and everywhere dusted gray with soil, including, I noted, the corners of his mouth, which seemed stained particularly thoroughly and much more darkly. Your uncle, my father rumbled, not quite asking the question, and then he added, my brother. I nodded. Show him in, he ordered. The squat stranger, my uncle, who I remembered smelling of sour milk, seemed elated at his prospects. I led him down the basement stairs, his agitation growing exponentially until he saw my father standing at his full height. It must have been at least 8 or 9 feet then, I think, at the entrance of his renovations. I knew to take my leave, and as I ascended the stairs, I heard the visitor remark that my father seemed to have done very well for himself, all things considered. I never saw that man who claimed to be my uncle, either that day or any day after. Perhaps coincidentally, this is also the last clear memory of my father, and the one that returned to me many years later when my brother suggested we return to our father's house. It seemed my brother wanted to put his mind at ease by checking up on our father, who had been left alone for now slightly longer than we had lived with him. On the one hand, I appreciated my brother's sentiment, even if I felt it was misplaced. On the other hand, I knew I could not stop him. His feelings towards my father had always been more lenient. The only question was, would I go along with him, or would I let him make the visit on his own? Let me hack up a lung first, and I say we go along with him. There we go. We decided upon a day to visit our childhood home, where we would assume our father still lived, and decided to meet there one afternoon the following week. But there must have somewhere been a miscommunication. Uh-oh. I was late. I must have been late, the alternative, that is, from his own purpose. My brother arrived early to see our father before I did, and I do not wish to contemplate why that would be. The town was considerably less industrial than it had been, though the taste of industry still laced our waters and air. The old neighborhood, not the most affluent even in the former times, had fallen into further disrepair. The houses up and down the block stood withered and, it seemed, empty. The sidewalk buckled around thick protrusions of stickly weeds, which reached out into the potholed streets, protruding fingers of an overgrown lawn. The only sign of habitation was a single car, my brother's car, parked outside our old home. This seems like a bad thing. The door was locked, the windows rolled up. A hand pressed to the hood told me it was not warm, but apart from that, I had no way of guessing how long the vehicle had been there unattended. Ahead, the house awaited. It seemed not much different from the rest of the building, scraped down to stray bones by the elements. The windows were gone, without even slivers of glass remaining, and the porch had bowed and now held a stagnant pool of rainwater. The front door stood open at an angle, and slowest most hinge must have rested and snapped in two. Stepping carefully over on the rotted porch, I slipped inside and found myself in the old living room. The floor was littered with trash and chunks of plaster dropped from the ceiling. The television was gone, though a lighter patch in the shredded wallpaper marking The floor was littered with trash and chunks of plaster dropping from the ceiling. The television was gone, though a lighter patch of shredded wallpaper marked in its former location. The couch had collapsed and now seemed covered with mounds of some sort of gray mold or fungus. Ahead was a central hallway of the house. I could see the door to the basement that had been wholly removed. Whew. I called out my brother's name and then stood for a moment looking down into unremitting darkness. Of course, the power was out. It was probably disconnected long ago, but a flashlight lay on the floor just outside the basement entrance. My brother's? The flashlight seemed quite new. I flicked it on and pointed it down the basement, but it penetrated far enough to only reveal the foot of the stairs. I called my brother's name again and waited. There was still no response. Assuming the basement was anything like I had seen it, my brother could have easily gotten hurt if he went down without his flashlight. He might have been lying down there just beyond the stairs, unconscious. I had to make sure. Flashlight ready, I went into the basement. This seems bad. Oh, fuck. The stairs creaked beneath my feet. This seems bad. I reached the bottom. This seems really bad. And when my flashlight returned, only a slope heading deeper beneath the house. Wait, do I see stairs or am I insane? I knew my father had done quite a bit of work in the decade since we left. I swear to God, if something jumped out at me, I'm not going to be happy. I went down. I called for my brother. I walked to the left. I walked to the right. Oh, God. Only my own breathing echoed back through the chambers of the barren earth. I walked farther into the darkness. Don't scare me, for the love of fucking God. Around me there was nothing but darkness. I walked further onward. I'm not happy. I called for my brother again and received no answer. The path branched left and right. Oh, fuck me. I hear digging. In the distance, the sound of shoveling did not break its rhythm, as if the digger did not know or care I was there. I followed the sound of the digging. I walked further into the darkness. Where was my brother? I followed the sound of the digging. I went left. I'm more worried about the brother right now. The distance is... Oh. I followed the sound of the digging. I took a deep breath. I followed the sound of the digging. Followed the closest turn in the path. This is the darkness. I followed the sound of the digging. Was I going in circles? How would I ever be able to tell? I followed the sound of the digging. I looked. I took a downward slope path left. I called my brother's name. Oh, for fuck's sake. Okay, follow the sound of the digging. Follow the sound of the digging. 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 How long have I been down here? I turned right. I followed the sound of the digging. I can't move. Oh, God. I can't move. I don't like this. I did not find my brother. I do not know what to tell our mother. I do not know where to go from here, what to do. It is true, I gave up my search, but once I saw what lived there, had been living there for all these years, or more precisely what had grown there, I ran from the basement. I didn't see a goddamn thing. The screen was black. Whew, somehow by my own luck or by some other design, I made it out of that darkness, though my brother did not. There's a chance, I think, that he may still be alive. My gut is heavy. Do not doubt that. But it is outweighed by the fear I experienced from when I came face to face with the terrible result of my father's attempted renovations of a rotting world. I once told my brother there was no such place as hell. I still believe that to be true, but whatever my little brother is now, I wonder if he has grown as tall as our father. My father's long, long legs. Holy fucking shit. Okay, well... Oh, God. Whew. Okay, so, sorry the screen cut off the text a little bit there. I didn't know how wide this was going to go, and I thought I had actually reached an appropriate length, but, holy shit, that was scary. Oh my God. Whew. If you could not tell, this was called My Father's Long, Long Legs. This was, as you could see, an interactive story where you got to pick and choose what direction you went, how you saw your past, with what you lived with, and what your father kind of went through, and your mother. This is, I guess you could technically say a game, because it is kind of a choose-your-own-path kind of thing. But that was really good. The fact that I honestly thought when the humming started, I was going to get jump scared. Nothing happened, obviously. We just see the picture of the end of the very long, freaking hairy leg. But that was such a good setup because, honestly, the reason why I thought I was going to be jump scared because it's dark. You have a flashlight. It's the only thing you can see. You have to illuminate your own text. You kind of have to look around your screen and be like, okay, where is everything? And when the humming started, I honestly thought something was going to like turn or shriek at me or something, but there was nothing. You just leave, apparently. But as you can see, there were other options that I could have chosen from at the beginning and kind of near the middle. So if you want to play this game for yourself, I'll leave a link below in the description as to where you can find this. It's a pretty simple game. Like I said, you just read the story over and you click as you go. It is recommended that you play with headphones, and I highly agree with that because the humming in my ear freaked me the hell out. Whew. But as it stands, this is over. I fled. I'm assuming my brother is in hell, and my father dug there. If there's a way to save the brother, I have no clue. But if you play the game and you find out, hey, there is a way to find him in the darkness, let me know. But as it stands, it's over. Thank you all so much for watching, I suppose, or at least listening to me ramble on and read a story. My name is Chewing90. Thank you all so much for watching. If you liked this video, please hit that like button. Share this with anyone of your choosing on any form of social media that you pick. If you want to be told when I update my channel, please hit that please hit that subscribe button. That'll make me very happy. And as always, stay animated, my friends. Don't go in the basement and start digging, because you could wind up in hell. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Goodbye!